Good afternoon. My name is Chris Leak. I would like to call the meeting to order and welcome everyone to the June 8th, 2023 meeting of the City County Planning Board. Would you please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Today's meeting is being broadcast live on TV 13 and will be rebroadcast at 10 a.m. Friday morning and again at 4 p.m. Sunday afternoon. Our first order of business today will be the consent agenda. These are items for which the petitioner is requesting withdrawal or continuance, or items for which staff has recommended approval and no one has signed up to speak in opposition. For all public hearings, each side will have a total of 12 minutes. There will be no rebuttal period. Once the public hearing is closed and the board goes into work session, no one is permitted to speak unless a planning board member asks them a question. For general use district zoning requests, the planning board must consider the full range of uses allowed in the zoning district being requested. The petitioner may not refer to a specific use for the property. For special use district zoning requests, however, the petitioner must identify the intended use or uses of the site and give specific details on how the site will be developed. Items under Section B of the agenda will require final action by the appropriate elected body, either the City Council or County Commissioners. As such, votes taken today by the Planning Board concerning these items are recommendations that will be considered by the elected bodies during their review of the request. Before addressing the Planning Board today, we would need your name, address, and zip code for the record. Our first item of business is the approval of the minutes of the May 11th and May 25th meetings. Are there any additions or corrections? Is there a motion?
Move approval. Second.
Motion by Mr. Lamb, second by Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? All in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. That is unanimous. Thank you. Now I'm going to call on Mr. Mark Allred to review the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First up is item C1. This case has been automatically withdrawn per the applicant's request. We did have one continuance. Item E1 requested continuance of 8 or more days prior to the planning board meeting, so it's been continued to July 13th. B1 does have opposition, so item B1 will not be on consent. So the first one up we got today is item B2. This is W3581 of Truist Bank. It's a rezoning of general business special use to limited office, 0.74 acres, north side of the intersection of West Haynes Mill Road and Raven Road. So you can see here, you've got residential here to the northwest, you've got the bank and limited office here to the east, and kind of surrounding it is highway business with US 52 to the west. The aerial shows that a building is here. This used to be an oil change place. NCDOT, with the widening of West Haynes Mill Road, has eminent domain, has removed this building, so this building's no longer here any longer. Right. So the area plan has this as a proposed land, has this as commercial. The legacy recommends having a transitional area between commercial and residential. LO provides for that transition. The request is consistent with legacy and the area plan, therefore staff recommends approval of this request.
Are there any questions for staff? No one has signed up to speak. Is anyone here opposed to this recommendation? Seeing none, I declare the public hearing closed. What is the motion of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I move the planning board find that the request is consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Lamb, second by Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? All those in favor, sign of aye. Aye. Opposed, the same sign. That is unanimous.
Mr. Chairman, I further move the planning board recommend approval of W3581.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Lamb, second by Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. That is unanimous.
B3, due to staff recommendation, item B3 will not be on consent. Next up we have is a subdivision. This is D1, subdivision 2023058, Lucan subdivision. It's a 16-lot subdivision, RS9, 5.48 acres on the south side of intersection of Lucan Lane and Tuttle Drive. The subdivision shows an extension of Tuttle Drive, which is a public street, to serve the 16 lots. All lots being proposed meet UDO requirements, and staff recommends approval of the request.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval.
Motion by Mr. Lamb, second by Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion?
Yeah, is that a stub at the south end of this, or is it geographically compromised?
That's a good question. That looks like a stub. Coming in there. Hard to tell.
I believe, Mr. Bryan, that's a temporary T turnaround that does have right-of-way. You can see on the image dedicated all the way to the adjoining property.
It is.
So if that should come in the future, they can tie into that.
Okay.
Previous motion is second on the floor. Any other discussion? All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. That is unanimous.
Next is D2. This is subdivision number 2023059, New Walkertown. This is 75-lot subdivision. RS9 is 38.39 acres on both sides of New Walkertown Road, east of Northampton Drive. The proposed 75-lot subdivision shows an extension of Barnwell Drive here from the south, coming all the way through the middle of the subdivision. There is also 3 more proposed public streets that you can see kind of through here in the middle and a small one here on the south side. The proposal has 3 stormwater devices with multi-use trails going around them and connecting to a open recreation area, not recreation area, but open area to the north. This is a regular subdivision. It's not a PRD. So the subdivision does meet UDO requirements, and staff recommends approval of this request.
Question, is
Yes.
it 75 or 74? I thought it had lost.
It's 74. I apologize.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, just a further clarification, they had to lose a lot to create a permanent turnaround on the northern end of the northwestern stub there.
Okay. All right.
But thank you for the clarification.
No problem.
Move approval.
Motion by Mr. Lamb, second by Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion?
Yes, if I could. What kind of connector is over that stream? Is that a permanent bridge, or
That I could not ask you. I'd have to ask.
are there any requirements that we have in terms of design on that, if that's going to be part of the tree save area?
Because this is a regular subdivision and wasn't actually required.
Oh,
This is
okay.
something being offered. That no.
But because it's a stream, U.S. Corps of Engineers would have say on that design and the implications of that. So they would have to get that cleared.
All right, previous motion is second on the floor. Any further discussion? All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. That is unanimous.
Next is W3574, and Nick Smith will be presenting for you. Let's just make sure we're right. All right.
Good afternoon, members of the board. My name is Nick Smith. Very excited to be here with you all tonight. So this request is for 5 parcels owned by Linda Needham and Scott Needham. It's 2.77 acres southeast of the intersection of University Parkway and Laura Avenue. And the request is for a special use rezoning from one current LB limited business limited use parcel, or 2 limited business limited use parcels, 1 highway business special use parcel, and 2 RS12 parcels, to all 5 parcels being classified as highway business special use. All right. Property is located in GMA 3, up in the northern part of the over in the northeast ward of the city. This is a location map for the properties, pointing out the zoning designations for all 5 parcels and where they are in relation to University Parkway and Laura Avenue. The area plan recommends office or institutional type uses for the southern 2 parcels that are currently zoned limited business, limited use. It does recommend commercial for that top left property that is currently zoned highway business special use. And the area plan does recommend single-family residential for the 2 properties to the right that are highlighted in yellow. Here is an aerial of the parcels. You can see that on those two right parcels, there are two single-family homes currently. In the top left corner, the HB special use district or parcel. It is a residential home that was converted into an office type use, so it still has residential characteristics. And the limited business, limited use parcels to the south currently house a snow cone shop. This is the residential property that was converted to an office. It currently most recently housed a nutritionist, I believe, that operated out of this area. Like I said, like this description says, this is looking south from Laura Avenue at the one of the many subject properties. The structure is the westernmost of the three properties. This one is the easternmost of those three properties on Laura Avenue. Again, just a residential property. This is looking east along Laura Avenue. Subject properties are located to the right. You can see the one-way drive in the bottom right. That is the exit for that residential property that was converted to office use. This is looking south along University Parkway. The residential building that's an office is just off to the left, and you can see the snow cone place through the trees. And then this is a direct shot of the snow cone place where it currently is. So this is the site plan, the most up-to-date site plan for the property. Notice that the access to Laura Avenue has been removed, and the bank building in the top parcel has been moved as far west as is currently feasible based on this site plan. Additionally, you can see up here that the developer is extending the type 3 buffer zone that is automatically along the residentially zoned properties. They have agreed to extend that buffer zone as far west as is feasible based on the traffic pattern that they are going for the property. Both stormwater devices are on site. There is a stormwater device right here and a stormwater device right here as well. While the developer has made several modifications to allay staff concerns, the request will allow further encroachment of commercial uses into an established residential neighborhood, which is something that Legacy 2030 tells us to avoid as much as we can. Prior rezonings of the site included conditions to protect adjacent homes from high-intensity commercial uses. There were some very specific conditions. I brought those rezoning cases up if you have questions about those. This proposal does remove those protections. This proposal does not meet the recommendations of Legacy 2030 and the recommendations of the area plan for those parcels. I do want to also point this out. There are two modified conditions based on the conditions that you received as part of your packet. We adjusted these to be a bit more precise for what is on the site plan. We specified that northern extension of the buffer yard will go for at least 105 feet. And then the developer also requested that there be permission for two freestanding signs, one in the northwest corner of the northwest property and one at the drive access for the restaurant to the south. So we just updated those two conditions to more accurately reflect what is currently on the site plan. So staff does recommend denial, and the site plan does meet UDO requirements. So happy to answer any questions.
Do the signs have to be 250 feet apart on this?
No, because these would be separate parcels. It's just whenever we wrote the sign condition, we neglected, we were looking at it as one project, but it's shown as two lots. And again, they are, the signs that we've modified the condition are actually shown on the plan. So it's not a change to the plan, it's just a change to our condition.
Thank you.
I've looked at this property a couple of times. How developable, if that's a word, is the property behind the southernmost building? There's a stream that runs just before that, and then from the aerial, it shows that the property lines in, but then there's a big section in there. Is that all topographically challenged?
Go to that one, okay.
Yeah.
There we go.
So it's floodplain?
Floodplain.
Okay. And most of that. Okay, that helps. Part of it is, part of it isn't.
Any additional questions for staff? Thank you, Mr. Smith. All right, we will have a public hearing on this. Again, each side will have 12 minutes to speak. There will be no rebuttal. For proponents, we have Luke Dickey coming up. Luke, you know the drill. State your name, address, and zip code for the record, please, sir.
Is Doug on any business anymore?
Thank you, Chairman, members of the board. Luke Dickey with Stimmel Associates, 601 North Trade Street, Suite 200, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, 27101. Representing this project here, I've also got the developer with Track West, who will be able to answer any questions, and Davenport Engineering is here, who prepared the TIA as well, that can answer any specific questions you may have in regards to that, because I know those numbers can get quite confusing as you review those reports. Nick did a great job of kind of showing you basically where this site is located. So it's off of University and Laura Avenue there on the southeast corner. As came into the discussion, you show here this is where the floodplain is located behind there. So that southern parcel then is really all woods and floodplain. So that's a good adjacent buffer for this site. You've got Target directly across the street, Chipotle kind of strip center. There's also to the north then, I think it's an oil change kind of tire place, self-storage. And so there's a lot of commercial then along this corridor of University Parkway. Overall, we did our neighborhood outreach, all the parcels shown in red here. So we sent out 118 invitations total. So we did an online meeting. It's been a while back since we did that. I believe that was back in March because of the fact that we've continued this case a couple times as we kind of worked through revising of the site plan. With that, we had 19 of the neighbors reach out to us, with 17 attending the online meeting. And so I think we had a good conversation just to kind of understand what their concerns were. And you might hear some more of that here this evening. Overall, the site plan, the key highlights, again, this is 2.77 acres. It's a proposed bank and restaurant, sit-down restaurant use. The only access is off of University Parkway, so we'll be working with NCDOT on that signalization there, because right now it's a 3-leg signal. We'll be adding a 4th leg to that, so we've got some stacking that we have to pay attention to, the new turn lane movements and everything that will work out with them there. The bank use is the one that's proposed to be up on the north towards Laura Avenue. And again, we have pulled that as far to the west as possible. That's the least intense of the two uses that we look at. You'll notice also that the drive-through is shown on the bottom side, so the south side of the building, so it's not up against Laura Avenue. It's on the south side there with parking. The sit-down restaurant is roughly just under 5,000 square feet. So that's a little bit more of an intense use, so that would be more of an evening type use there. And then, so that's located then to the south. And then it's basically buffered for the most part from the south and the east by that one undevelopable parcel. The next, so you can see on the slide was with that condition where we pulled the building away and then also added the buffer coming along Laura Avenue. And you'll see kind of somehow we'll outline that in the next slide here to help add some additional protections to the neighborhood. Per the area plan, I just basically highlighted everything that was kind of more of the commercial type of uses. The bottom use is kind of the more of an office limited business, but it does have a snow cone kind of restaurant business there, so it is kind of acting as a commercial use in that aspect. It had the existing office on the corner there, and then slated right across the street of Laura Avenue then is also slated to be commercial as well per the area plan. And then you can see where I just kind of drew an orange dashed line coming down for the back of where that commercial parcel would be to kind of give perspective. So our building is all the way basically kind of to the front of that. This is then showing the two lots that were currently residential. We've ran into this multiple times on various projects here on University Parkway of the area plan calling for commercial uses on parcels that front University. But this parcel right now at the front to redevelopment is only 115 feet deep. So redevelopment of those is quite a challenge. We saw the Truist Bank case that was up there off of Haynes Mill. We had rezoned just above that as well for when we did the kind of the car wash. We had that same scenario. The area plan called for the front parcels to be commercial, back parcels to remain single-family residential, but we just didn't have the depth to be able to do that. So in this plan, we kind of run into that kind of same scenario that we're looking at, and that's why we're requesting to come forward from redevelopment. But we also understand the concerns of the area plan and looking how can we pull these uses and orient them to University Parkway and not impact what's going on for what's an established neighborhoods of the back. That's why we eliminated the connection to Laura Avenue all traffic would be directed then out to University Parkway, expanding those buffers, and then make sure that all those uses are oriented towards University as opposed to Lower Avenue, which is the residential street. Just kind of, working with staff, we understood what their concerns were in regards to that. So this is kind of what happens when we pulled that site plan all the way up. So we got that last lot. If we could have removed it, it would have been ideal to not include that in the zoning case, to create even more buffer. But you can see we're just, with site circulation getting around the building, we had the parking to go in there. And then once you add buffer onto that, we still needed that lot to be part of this case to be able to get this development. But overall, 82.5% of that lot is open space and buffer. So we're really not impacting too much of that lot from there. And then, like I had mentioned in the previous slide, you can see kind of where that line comes down if we were to line up commercial across the way of the other site with this site as well. Kind of the key point of that is, I imagine if somebody comes and develop that northern parcel, we're probably going to have the same conversation about how much space is to redevelop it for commercial use as well. And we have talked to that neighbor, and they are in support of our rezoning case. And I believe they sent an email in that regards to planning staff that might have been included in your packet too. Overall, again, the area plan does recommend kind of commercial uses on that front parcel. And then, of course, we have the current single family on the rear side. We pulled the plan as far up to University as we possibly could and provided that additional landscape buffering to reduce that Lower Avenue visual impact and also to the neighbors across the street the best that we could. Traffic is directed to a signalized intersection on University Parkway with no access to Lower Avenue. Provides redevelopment of existing commercial parcels along a significant existing commercial corridor that's going through there. In terms of traffic, we have a median that kind of divides the site from Lower Avenue. So Lower Avenue is a right in, right out. So it's projected that a majority of the traffic, 60%, is going to come from the south, 40% is going to come from the north. You might have the understanding when our conversations with the neighbors, they had concern about cut-through traffic. And that's also why we eliminated the connection to Lower Avenue. That prevent cut-through traffic really from coming there. So they'd have to come out to, if they want to cut through, the easiest way for them to go through is when they go north, to skip the light there at Oak Summit and go through the neighborhood if anybody is going to the east on Oak Summit. Projections have 5% of the overall traffic heading towards Oak Summit that would access this development. In the peak hour, that is 2 cars. So that is from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. 2 cars are projected from this development to be able to go in that direction. And the same thing for the PM peak. 2 cars are projected in the peak hours to exit development to go to the east on Oak Summit. So that could be the possibility that if they decide not to go to Oak Summit, they would cut through potentially Lower Avenue. Overall, yes, you'll see in the numbers, there's roughly 1,300 trips that are generated from this project. So over a 24-hour period. So I'd imagine that throughout other times of the day, there may be some additional cut-through traffic. We just can't really predict who's going to use the roads. But again, majority of the traffic estimated from what today's traffic counts show, turn movements, is 5% is using Oak Summit in those areas. Understand concerns from neighbors as we've dealt with this on other times, but that's also why we eliminated that connection to Lower Avenue to encourage everybody to come out onto University Parkway and really not have that option. They have to physically then choose to make that option if they're coming up University Parkway. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
In the neighborhood meeting, I guess the Zoom meeting of the 17 participants, how many were concerned about the traffic pattern?
Yeah, so I'd say a majority of all of them in the conversation were concerned. So there are about 6 individuals in that meeting that were more vocal in terms of what they're speaking, but you'd see in the chat kind of comments saying, yes, I agree with that, yes, I agree with that. So I'd say most of them were concerned, obviously, with the cut-through traffic, existing traffic issues, obviously on University Parkway, existing cut-through through Lower Avenue, and the impacts they currently have on the site. Also, the kind of discussions was potential for crime, homelessness that's in the area, utilizing these lots, something bringing it closer to their neighbors, and just the general concerns about the general fit of this and the impacts to their neighborhood overall.
What changes were initiated after that?
So the changes that were initiated and from the site plan that we had done, we had a connection onto Lower Avenue, and that bank was pulled further to the back, and we also worked with staff and their concerns and comments as well.
And the additional buffer?
And the additional buffer was added based on for staff's comments and trying to pull everything up too.
Is the northern stormwater device the reason you can't swing the bank around 100 or 90 degrees?
So both of the stormwater devices we have shown in here, just because of how compact everything's going to be, they're most likely going to be underground.
Okay.
from that standpoint. So the site falls basically from the northeast to the, northeast to the southwest
Okay.
is where the site. So we're trying to direct everything, basically falls kind of roughly towards University Parkway. So that's where our stormwater devices then.
So
kinda
could
get
you,
there.
could you push it further west if you turned it, oriented it the
So,
opposite
yeah, so
direction?
if we rotated the bank with another, say 90 degrees, whether direction it would go, then it would impact the circulation for the parking that we have for the parcel of the restaurant use. So we have so we're trying to separate these two parcels then. So everything basically, you can see, here's the line, basically where the parcel line would be. So that's the selling for the bank parcel, and then that would be the restaurant parcel. They have a common access easement to get back to the light.
I can't see that.
I can't see mine. I can't see it. I see it on mine. So if you look at directly below the bank, then at the point where you see the drive-through lane, that's where the property line would be. Click on that. There, click on that one. Okay, excellent.
There we go.
Sorry about that.
Thank you, Mark. So yeah, here's where the proposed property line then is at that point for how this lays out. So the restaurant would have its circulation, all the parking that it needs surrounds all the way around it. So if we rotate the bank, that would impact, I'm not sure how the circulation then would work to access each of the parcels in that scenario.
All right.
How do you trace the path of bank customers through the
Yeah,
drive-through?
so a bank customer would come in off of University Parkway. They would come up here to get to the drive-through. They would go the one-way, it's a one-way circulation around the building.
Okay,
They would technically go to the drive-through at that point, and then, they'd
Around again.
recirculate back around.
right, okay.
Like being at Chick-fil-A.
Like the Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, exactly, it is.
Maybe have a sandwich on the way out. Right.
But it's not a drive-through at the restaurant, so.
That's right, it's not,
Probably
yeah.
not.
No, I'm saying the bank's like being at.
No, I know, but Chris said you get a sandwich on the way, but.
They do have, we do have the to-go pickup places on this side, so you can get your to-go, and then you can get it. I'd recommend going to the bank first before purchasing from the restaurant.
Any additional questions for Luke? How much time is left?
4.5.
What's the distance from Laura Drive, the southern terminus of Laura Drive, to the northern terminus of the entrance to this parcel? I can't tell from the site plan.
From here to here.
I've got something that's got more of a scale onto it, so I can.
Well, I'm just thinking, they're not, it's not
The-
a stacking
The
question.
overall distance on the westernmost property line, which is, the property and adjacent to University, is 373 feet. So I imagine if the driveway is probably centered on that southernmost property or towards the northern side of that property, it's probably 230, 240 feet would be my guess.
Okay.
Yeah, here's where that property line is from the existing,
Okay.
so wherever that, not sure what you have that distance on there.
And
but-
coming out of this parcel, you'll have a dedicated left turn heading southbound on University, and
We have a dedicated through.
through and right.
Through and right,
Okay.
yes.
At the light. At the light.
So I'm really trying to picture, you're not really expecting through traffic on Laura since you closed that off.
Right.
But you mentioned Oak Summit, so you're thinking people will take 52 to Oak Summit as a shortcut through residential areas?
Yeah, so to get to this site from the east would be Oak Summit, the way you'd come in.
Okay.
And so, but you would have to get on University Parkway and turn south and access the site through the light. Because if you turned on to Laura Avenue trying to get to this site, then you come in at a right in, right out before you get to it. So any traffic coming from the east would have to access University to get into it. Any traffic that's leaving the site has the option, if they wanted to go up to Oak Summit, or they decided they wanted to cut through Laura Avenue if that's the way they wanted to go.
There's a concrete median on University at Laura.
Yeah.
So eliminating the access on Laura really makes it not worth driving on Laura unless you just don't want to ride up University
Yeah.
after you come out and cut through.
Obviously the peak hours, there's a lot of there's a lot of
Right.
backup that
It is
happens at Shadow
does back up
Lawn,
a
Oak
lot.
Summit because of the amount of traffic there. So it backs up kind of through that intersection. So I imagine there are some people before if they get tired of waiting in line and they know they're going to turn, that go east on Oak Summit that then say, hey, I'm backing up, I'm going to take Laura because Laura does have a connection all the way back up to it. And that's existing today.
Well, the place that's there now, I don't even know how you get in there, like, with the light, because the driveway's kind of not really aligned. So at least it does.
It is an improvement. It
Right,
is.
yeah, yeah.
Any other questions for Mr. Dickey? Sir, would you like, I think there are 4 minutes left. Would you like to, I mean, you're at the mic, you may as well let us hear your voice.
Yeah, might as
If
well.
you'll state your name, address, and zip code for the record.
Yeah, Brandon Cablano, 1721 Springer Street in Atlanta, Georgia. Hard to follow Luke there. He's the pro, but
Zip code, please.
30318.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we're excited about this project. You know, the bank, both tenants are Class A++ tenants. The bank is going to be all glass. The restaurant, I think, just speaking from neighbors and people that we know around here, will be happy with it. My wife's been a resident of Winston-Salem for the past 4 years. She just finished Wake Law, so we've passed this many, many times. I hear the neighborhood. We understood their concerns in the initial meetings. You know, that's why closing off Laura Ave. And really, I mean, if you were to look at how people use a bank these days, anyways, it's almost like a glorified office. I mean, I don't know how many people are truly going to the bank anymore. You know, most of the time they're doing this for presence in the neighborhood. But yeah, you know, and I think one thing to point out that you all mentioned was the improvement to the existing conditions, because if you were trying to go into Pelicans right now, the driveway is kind of split the light, and so you don't have to follow the light to get in or out of Pelicans, so you're just kind of shooting the gap. But yeah, we're excited. We're appreciative of y'all's time, and that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you. How much time?
2 minutes and 52 seconds.
All right, 2 minutes and 52 seconds. Would anyone else like to speak in support? All right, we'll now move to the opposition. Again, you have 12 minutes. We have 3 signed up. Martha Jones, Sherry Cochran, I think it is, or Cochran, and Judy Griffin. Whoever wants to come first. And again, state your name, address, and zip code for the record, please.
I'm Martha Jones. I live at 117 Laura Avenue, Winston-Salem, 27105.
Thank you.
Pardon me if I'm going to just read, but that's easier for me. We're here today with my neighbors because we want to see the safety and the integrity of our neighborhood maintained and feel this rezoning at Laura Avenue and University Parkway will work in opposition to that. We're a small neighborhood, racially diverse, culturally diverse, generationally diverse, including original homeowners, some in their 80s and 90s, homeowners with small children, homeowners who've been there 20, 30, 40 years in this neighborhood, and some newer residents, myself being one of those. In reviewing the North Suburban Area Plan, we feel that in essence, it argues against this development. And I refer to the following statements from your plan. Forgive me if I'm quoting something to you. You know by heart very well, but it was the first time I ever read a plan like this. Page 23, neighborhoods should be protected from inappropriate residential, commercial, and industrial encroachment, and the revitalization of older, underutilized commercial sites and buildings should be encouraged. Page 25, preserving the existing character of the older neighborhoods in the planning area is a priority of the plan. Page 46, the design of neighborhoods that allow residents to age in place and actions to make neighborhoods more pedestrian-friendly and safe. Our neighborhood already experiences traffic issues from University Parkway and Oak Summit Road where people are cutting through Laura Avenue to Oak Summit to avoid the light at Chatillon. The traffic backup at Target intersection this afternoon as we came here at 3:30, when we pulled up to that intersection, the traffic was backed up all the way to Bethabara Park Boulevard at 3:30 in the afternoon. And additionally, we're touched by the houseless tent populations in the nearby areas. The rezoning would remove the homes at 106 and 107 Laura Avenue that are currently occupied by long-term renters who maintain the properties very well and have been very good neighbors. Encroachment into the neighborhood will negatively impact us with regard to traffic, safety, trash, noise pollution, and light pollution. Page 25, the plan references existing commercial areas that blend with existing development and do not infringe on nearby residential neighborhoods would be used first. Sites in the surrounding area more suitable for a bank or restaurant are those such as University Haynes Mill Activity Center, University Parkway north of Haynes Mill, North Point Boulevard, Indiana Avenue. Page 23, commercial development should be concentrated in designated areas and not be allowed to take the form of strip development along major roads in the planning area. We feel the encroachment will impact our neighborhood in the following ways. The traffic issue mentioned earlier will increase on Lower Avenue, where we have lots of residents who walk their dogs, walk to grocery stores, bus stops, and includes one wheelchair-bound resident who uses the street. We appreciate the change that we see in the plan for the elimination of the egress onto Laura Avenue from the bank, but I don't believe that it's only going to add 2 cars an hour down our street. I still think that backup of traffic and additional flow there will create more people wanting to cut down Laura Avenue. The character of the neighborhood is at risk with light and noise pollution and negative impact to home values. Some residents are already discussing leaving the neighborhood if this goes through. Safety can be impacted with a restaurant bar introducing potential for crime and vagrancy. Future development is uncertain as the developer did not discuss the full list of potential uses for the land. Some of the uses that are listed in this agenda under their plan could create additional issues to those above. We do have a petition that is circulating that opposes this rezoning and is signed by neighbors who are immediate to the rezoning area and along Laura Avenue, residents on Barlow Circle and Kevin Drive who will also be impacted. Comments on the petition include concerns about traffic, safety, noise, trash, the things that I mentioned above. So we're asking you to please not pass this. And I do have a copy of the petition with the signatures we have to date. We're still collecting some.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Any questions for Ms. Jones? All right, thank you. How much time is left?
7.5 minutes.
All right, 7.5 minutes. Hi.
Hi, my name is Sherry Cochran. I live at 160 Laura Avenue, Winston-Salem 27105. I'm not as prepared as Martha here, but I concur with everything she has said, and I would like to reinforce that it would be a great disservice to our community, our neighborhood, our quality of life. There is way far more than 2 cars that turn off of University to cut through to get to Oak Summit on a daily basis. I'm worried about the impact on Leak Fork Creek that is there, and the floodplain is there. The creek is currently congested with hundreds and hundreds of tires. I have documentation of such from probably all the way from Patterson Avenue and the development that's upon there, that's through there. I know that Target had to put in quite a bit of underground water drainage systems there. I just don't know how that you can ensure that this will not be used as a cut-through. We have a wider range of people. We have quite a diverse neighborhood with lots of walkers, children on strollers, dog walkers, people with access to the bus stop as well. The traffic is incredible. There is always a gridlock coming out of the Target light. We have also the apartment building across from the shopping center where North Cherry Street enters, and everyone coming in from downtown has to do a U-turn to get into that existing huge parking, the apartment complex that is there. We've had 2 fatalities in the past of children being killed on Oak Summit exiting buses. I just think that the impact would be too much, and I kudos to the people who have taken the houses and left them intact, because buffering up against a residence where you can have a business and it maintains, there's plenty of commercial development that could use the insurance company, the snow cone people. It's how they can get traffic in and out, but it's very family friendly, and I just think that it's just not feasible. I would hope that you would oppose this at this time and to consider the integrity of our neighborhood, and I thank you.
Thank you.
Could I ask a question?
Yes.
Ms. Cochran?
Ms. Cochran, there's a question.
Yes,
I hesitated to ask Ms. Jones as she prefaced her statement saying she was fairly new there, but there were some, are you new as well?
No, I've lived there 33 years.
Okay. There were some safeguards with the last zoning that were put into place in terms of this turning into being commercial. What kind of promises did you feel were in place at that point for your neighborhood?
I'm not sure the promises by,
Do you want to address those qualifications on that previous zoning?
the amount, the impact in the 33 years that I've lived there with the development of Target, which wasn't there.
Absolutely.
The CVS that was not there, the Walgreens that was not there, like I said, it was nice to see that we did have, the development along this corridor here, which I know you have great plans for, but the traffic is just not handled. And we have a lot of cut-through traffic.
Yeah, did you find those, would you address those? I don't know whether she was aware of those or not. We were made aware by the notes.
So this was from case 3118, passed by the city council back in, on December 5th, 2011. As part, some of the conditions, some of the conditions for that were that the owner shall keep the existing, this is specifically for the snow cone place, all right? The owner shall keep the existing house and garage for use on the subject property, and in the staff report, they detail how that is seen as a way to try and limit the intensity of the commercial uses on that particular parcel. So that was a specific condition the city or staff recommended. I'm not sure who recommended the condition, but it was approved on December, so thank you.
Okay, so you weren't aware of that from the previous council meeting and all of that?
No, sir.
Okay.
But I do, I'm just here to oppose the current zoning change, to take this into consideration.
Thank you.
How much time is left?
5 minutes.
All right. We have Judy Griffin.
Hi, I'm Judy Griffin. I live at 107 Laura Avenue. My property would be directly across from the bank. I'm the second property from University. In the long-term plan, that first property, which faces University, I think is marked to be commercial, and I can understand that because their property faces University. They have a problem with traffic every day getting in and out of their driveway. Unfortunately, I'll be the buffer because the long-term plan has me remaining residential, and I'm close to that. I appreciate what the developer's done with the screening. I'm not sure it goes far enough. To speak to some of the things that were mentioned earlier, it does adjoin a floodplain, and on the other side of the floodplain, there's high-intensity power lines. So the traffic blocking on University is a huge problem. If you look at the state statistics for accidents, I used to work from home before I retired, and I would call in the reports of the accidents because it comes through there fast, it doesn't slow down, and as they said earlier, it backs up on University. There are a lot of people there today. I'm one of the dog walkers that cut through. I can identify the cars cutting through that are not neighborhoods, residents. Another problem is with a restaurant and the evening use. That's going to change the character of the neighborhood. And you talked about the prior zoning. We did have a insurance agency on the corner for many years until the gentleman retired. And then where the snow cone place is, we had a chiropractic office there for a while. And those did have minimal impact on the neighborhood, in my opinion. Let's see, some of the other things. Like I said, I take exception to that traffic count. People already using it, that cut through. They might be people that use the restaurant, they're going to continue to cut through, so that doesn't help us. The orientation of the bank is another thing that really does encroach on the neighborhood. One thing the neighborhood would like to consider is having the city close that end of the road, possibly, because currently it's closed to a left-hand turn out of there anyway. One of my concerns, being the buffer property, is that right now, behind me is a CVS. My property lines up directly behind the CVS. I'm sort of that little wedge in there. I have a problem now with maintenance. No one takes care of the property. It might be Class A. I don't know what Class CVS is, but we have trash. We have trash from parking lots. We have, I had to call and complain about, trees falling over and that kind of thing. And so, while these immediate uses sound all great, what's the future going to look like with the other proposed uses? So that's the reason I'm against this rezoning at this time, and I thank you for your consideration.
Since you mentioned walking your dog, there are not sidewalks on Laura Avenue or University through there. Is that correct?
That's correct. There are limited sidewalks on University in different areas, but they don't go all the way from Bethabara Park Boulevard down to the new apartment complex. And there's none on our side of the road, and there are surely none on Laura Avenue.
Okay. And there's no sidewalk installation as part of this site plan, is there? That's not for, I guess that's a question for staff. It doesn't look like there is. I couldn't see any. But there's a lot, a lot on there.
Could we get an answer to that?
Yeah.
Please?
We can. Give us a second.
That's fine.
While he
Oh,
looks,
okay.
I just want to point out that I've been a resident of the neighborhood for my 61 years. My parents built a home on Kevin Drive, which is a dead-end street that dead ends into 52 now. My grandparents built the house that I live in on 107. I have neighbors that I've known all my life in their 80s and 90s. We didn't drag them down here, but they have concerns. They have concerns about when, they built into the neighborhood to raise their family and to have a legacy for their children.
Help me understand where, you're not the first person that's mentioned the cut-through traffic. Help me understand where people are cutting through, because they can only turn right if they're headed north on University.
Correct.
Or right if they're headed west on Laura.
Correct. So the one thing, by closing that, the exit on Laura, that would keep people coming from Oak Summit. Right now, we have people who come from Oak Summit who circle the building to go to that nutrition shop in the bottom of the building, so they can come down Laura and turn in there. That avoids going to the light, which is just, 1 block north is the Oak Summit Shadowlawn University. So what we have now is people that need to go east on Oak Summit are coming down University. You're sitting at that light, and they're going to have another light immediately at the CVS to stop at. So if you're sitting in that traffic, you're home, you've got to go out Oak Summit and fight the traffic Oak Summit to Germantown Road. You're going to cut through.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions for Ms. Griffin? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
2 minutes remaining.
2 minutes remaining. If anyone else would like to, 2 minutes remaining. If anyone else would like to speak in opposition. All right, you don't mind stating your name, address, and zip code for the record.
Rebecca Emelson, 190 Laura Avenue, Winston-Salem, 27105. I wasn't planning on speaking, but I just want to, again, reiterate, we've been at our home for 18 years. It was our first home. We have 3 kids, and I've never once felt comfortable letting them walk on, we're right where Barlow comes in. We don't walk to the left because of the cut-through traffic, and they can't ride their bikes. So we have bikes, they ride them up and down our little sidewalk. I never feel comfortable myself walking to the left. I'll walk to the right and back in the dead end on Barlow Circle and Kevin Drive. just because of, it's not just the amount of cut-through traffic that we have. We've actually had to call the non-emergency number for the police to come out for people speeding through there. So not necessarily like even the amount, just the people who do cut through don't care that it's a residential neighborhood and they don't go 20, 25. They go 40, 45, who knows what sometimes, with no consideration of people walking. My kids, you know, we have a rule, don't go up the hill, because the road, Laura, is fairly narrow down the road. It's not like it's a big wide, so if your kids are playing at the edge of your yard, multiple times we just replaced our third mailbox because people drinking and driving, there's beer cans through there, and I realize people do it, but we already have this, and I feel like having a restaurant is just gonna magnify those concerns that have already been stated. I just wanted to also just add my 2 cents to that. That was it.
Thank you.
30 seconds.
30 seconds left if anyone else would like to speak in opposition. All right, seeing no one, I now declare the public hearing closed. Discussion, motion.
What did you decide about sidewalks? Staff report.
That's what I'm coming back to.
So I knew I'd heard or read something, so there is in the staff report, I don't know, that might be what y'all were talking about.
Well, it is. It's one of those. That's why I was talking to Brian and Mark. The ordinance says there's none proposed. I mean, excuse me, not the ordinance. The staff report says there are none proposed. University is an NCDOT road, but basically, if a facility is identified on the pedestrian sidewalk plan as needing to have sidewalks, then basically WISDOT will ask for that as part of their review. WISDOT is probably about 35% staffed. So at one point, Jeff Fansler was kind of doing about 5 different jobs. So I don't think he had the chance to review this. There were provisions in there that talked about a TIA being required and additional improvements may be required as part of the TIA. The TIA was reviewed, but again, I don't know that we actually have any specific site plan review comments from Winston-Salem DOT. At the end of the day, this is a special use district rezoning, but the ordinance requirements still apply. We have certified that meets the requirements. That's something that we'll probably need to look at and confirm and work with the site plan preparer should this go forward, either with a recommendation for approval or denial. However it goes forward, we'll work with them between now and the time it goes to council, which won't be until August, to try to rectify that. I think they probably should have been shown, at least on University. But that's something that we can work to coordinate between now and then.
And my reason for asking was that trying to create something that's a little more walkable or feels a little more neighborhood-esque, I guess. This is a tough one for me because it's not neither one of these uses are as intense as some things you could imagine being in the current zoning. And it's not got a drive-through. It sounds like it's going to be a fairly, nice restaurant. If you had a walkable, nice restaurant in your neighborhood, to me, that would be a benefit. But I also see very much that, if I sit here on cases where I say the land use plan says this is going to be whatever it says, when it's pro-development, the land use plan here for at least part of this property says it's not intended to be commercial. And so that's, I'm torn there.
What I really have been coming back to and looking at the properties and thinking what has changed, if anything, since those earlier recommendations about limiting it and limiting what physically could go. And they specifically noted banking, financial services, based on what was in the staff report. So to me, the only thing that's really changed since then is I think we all maybe recognize the benefit and the need for neighborhoods like this. So I lean towards protecting those neighborhoods because they are in shorter and shorter supply in our communities. And when you hear about the longevity of the families in the neighborhoods and the communities, I think we do need to consider that, and consider that as much as, do we need a new bank? Do we need a new restaurant? Then you ask, can they coexist? And I guess that's what the real issue is. How can they coexist without harming the neighborhood? What was the wisdom in the earlier recommendations? And if you look at, we're kind of chipping away at this buffer that was set before in terms of the area plan. And like you said, we're encroaching more into what was once considered sort of protected. And do we want to take those protections away?
Yeah, for me, we're changing the zoning of the land. It may be a bank right now, it may be a restaurant right now, but we're changing the zoning of the land. There's some things that concern me there, even though this is an S, so it would have to come back at some point, but is the proliferation of car washes in the future, I mean, would really be another step in affecting that neighborhood and where it's at right now. There's already been some erosion or attempt to erode some of the protections that neighborhood has had. The problem is that I don't feel the same about the southern property as I do the northern property in there, particularly where it's located across. So I wish the developer had come back with something that was looking at that rather than eroding into the neighborhood. And I still think there's potential for that in the future. But these protections for these folks and the fact that they have maintained their houses with that protection over time is something that I treasure.
I think it's a tough situation, and we've talked about this before, particularly on University. It seems like it keeps coming back. And these busy kind of roads that are pseudo-residential, heavy retail, and the area plan said, yes, commercial on the street, but the lots are really too narrow for anybody to do anything with. Other than an insurance agent, you just have to wait for the next insurance agent to come around, or maybe a little law office or something like that. So it makes it a difficult situation of how it can be developed. I do think the process really seems to have, I won't say it worked out, but this process allowed the residents to be heard by the developer, and the changes they have made do seem to make it a better situation, whereas you're not accessing Laura Avenue. And we've talked about the cut-through. Given the fact that you're not going to have access to Laura, you shouldn't have to worry about people coming from Oak Summit cutting through because they don't have anywhere to go. Of course, now maybe if somebody leaves the restaurant and then University's backed up, they might cut through. But that kind of allows some protection there. The bank was moved up, so it's more in line with that first property. I know, unfortunately, the one lady, I think Ms. Griffin, who lives on the opposite side of Laura, that bank property still faces you, but the buffer yard and the addition of the trees and the plantings, I think kind of act like a border for the neighborhood, and hopefully this would be the end, of the encroachment into the residential area. So that's just my thoughts. I did wonder about the sidewalks as well. There are not, the only sidewalks I can see looking on Google Earth are up at the Walgreens. But sidewalks might make it feel a little bit more like a neighborhood business type of thing. The only other idea would be, could they limit the uses with the zoning because there are things in there, like I think car washes in there and stuff like that you really don't want in your neighborhood. Might be a way to make the neighbors feel more comfortable, but that would have to be something the developer's willing to agree to.
What about, again, this is a really tough one. I'm trying to figure out a way to make it work, both for the neighborhood and the developer. If the neighborhood is supportive of closing Laura Avenue, what would it do to the site plan if you closed Laura Avenue, allowing enough of it to get all the residential traffic out going east, and then turn Laura Avenue into the access to the site? Is there a way to do that? So basically, you close Laura Avenue and then turn the university side into a driveway.
I mean, whenever there are a lot of what ifs in that scenario.
Closing the road.
Again, obviously, you had the opinion of one or two neighbors about that. Obviously, the process of closing a public right of way is a 3 or 4 month process with a lot of public input, including service delivery folks within the city and the county. To answer the question, procedurally, if it were to move forward for some type of a closure, the property basically you go to the center line and the property reverts to the property owners on both sides, depending on the length of the area that you're closing. So half of that right-of-way would go to the property to the south for the depth of the closure. Half would go to the property to the north, which is the other recommended commercial property that's currently, I think, residential. I don't think staff would be supportive of the closure of Laura Avenue. Again, the term cut through is one way to look at it. An alternative route is another. And, basically the more ways that you have to get from point A to point B from an overall traffic distribution and transportation network is preferable. Service delivery, garbage truck, police, fire, mail, UPS, all those kind of things. Whenever you take away access, you have to double back on areas, you have to double back down the street. So, to answer the question, I don't think we would support it. There perhaps could be a way, but obviously that is very speculative as to how the property could be potentially laid out to make it work.
Just for what it's worth, from my background, I will say, as a lot of you have said and observed, this is one of those right on the edge of things sites. There's next to nothing of residential character about University Parkway, and there never will be again unless it's high-density residential multifamily development. As a result, the lots that front along University Parkway over time are going to lose their residential character and zoning. That's the nature of urban growth. It's also correct that a lot of the lots that front on the east side of University Parkway don't have the depth for most of the requirements for commercial development. So it's there's almost no way to win, no way to lose. But I will say, to hold on to the goal of all of this remaining residential, and I grew up in a very mixed-use neighborhood, just is a little less than realistic. It in time will go commercial. Is this the right site plan and mix for it? I don't know. We'll find out in a minute how this board feels. But I think change is inevitable. I think our role is to manage that change to everyone's best interest as much as possible. I lost my thought. If you'll give me one more second. I was initially concerned over the appropriateness of a drive-through lane at a bank, but not at a restaurant. I think we should either want them or not. They're either appropriate or not, even though I would understand that the restaurant would attract more drive-through traffic than a bank would. I would love to see more time available so as to hear back from WSDOT with their suggestions regarding sidewalks, and from what I haven't heard sidewalks asked for. What I'm hearing asked for is traffic mitigation, traffic calming, changing of speed limits. I think there's still some work to be done.
Any other thoughts, comments from the board?
Just real quickly.
Sure.
Yeah, I think the spirit of the area plan is to have a commercial corridor. And I think that unfortunately, since we do this on a parcel by parcel basis, it's difficult to say the first 150 or 200 feet adjacent to thoroughfares are going to be commercial. But that's the intent of the area plan, is to see the fronts of commercials. I think the developer's done an excellent job. I think this plan cleans up the intersection terrifically. I think though sidewalks are required. I think that at least they should be required. We're imposing them everywhere else. There'd be zero reason to have them excluded on this. The hope is, of course, that one day is that the entire length of University Parkway would be sidewalked, and we'd have better pedestrian access. So those are just my thoughts on it. And I think the southern is well buffered. The southern side of the parcel, the western side, probably not as well, except in the northeast corner. The north side is well buffered by the road. So those would be that's my thinking.
All right, is anyone ready to make a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move the planning board find that the request is partially inconsistent with the comprehensive plan.
We have a motion by Mr. Lamb. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Specific
But
enough
I
for us
don't
to vote on.
think we can
Yeah, I
do
think
that. I
you-
think it has to be
yeah.
inconsistent with
I would
it.
second it if you're going to go one way or the other.
Yeah, I
but
think
I'm
it
not
needs to
gonna
be
sit on the fence with you.
inconsistent, so.
Just make it.
But
Consistent.
if you
I think
want
so.
me to do it, George, I'll do it. I mean, no,
Go
sorry,
ahead, go ahead.
clearance. I move that the planning board find that this request is inconsistent with the comprehensive plan.
Second.
Motion by Ms. McGray, second by Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? All those in favor, sign of aye. Aye. Opposed, the same sign. That is unanimous.
I move that the planning board recommend approval of W 3574.
Second.
Can I get with conditions as
Oh, sorry,
clarified by staff?
With conditions as clarified by staff.
Who was second, or has it been?
Could we define those for the record, please?
The ones
They're
on
in
the
front of
front
us.
It's all the ones on the screen.
Oh, here. Okay, I'm sorry.
So we have a motion by Ms. McCray, a second by Mr. Lamb. Any further discussion? All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Aye.
6-3. Ron, Lee.
I think that was, what, 6-3?
I had voted against the motion for approval as Mr. Bryan, Mr. Leek, and Mr. Steelman. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, then everyone else was in favor.
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
thank you. Thank you for coming out, neighbors, always great.
Mr. Chairman of the Board, the next item will be item B3, which would be case W3582. For those that are leaving, this case, it normally would go to City Council in July, but July will be on, the City Council will be on their break for July, so it will actually go to their first meeting in August, which is the first Monday in August, and I'm not sure what that date is, 4th, 5th, 7th, thank you.
Chairman, I'll just give everybody a moment to head out. All right, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, next item on your agenda is case W3582. Petitioners are Jesse Carr and Catherine Everhart. It's a approximately 1.82 acre site located on the west side of Beecham Road, north and west of Metal Art Drive. They're requesting a special use rezoning from RS9 to PBS. As you can see on the Legacy Growth Management map, it's located in Growth Management Area 3, suburban neighborhoods. It's just north of the Country Club Metal Arc Activity Center. This is the location map. You can see it's bounded on the north and south by RS9 zoning. To the west, there's HBS zoning. Just so you know, that is a driving range. That's the only use allowed there. There is an NOS zone property a little bit further south that is only for offices. And then there's the MUS zone property to the east. That's part of the Brookberry comprehensive rezoning there. And my understanding is that that's going to ultimately be a credit union there. You might also notice, I'm not sure if you can see my pointer. Let me fix that real quick. Right here, ultimately, this portion of Meadowlark is going to propose to be closed with the Meadowlark widening project. That's going to be cul-de-saced. And then the eventual access to this site will be off of this, I believe it's Red Tail Lane that's under construction now, and that will be how this Beecham Road will be accessed. This is the 2022 aerial. You can see it contains an existing single-family home here, and just to the south and north, there's the golf driving range, and there's that vacant parcel that'll eventually contain the credit union. This is looking across Meadowlark Drive towards the existing Beecham Road intersection. This is looking across Beecham Road towards the subject property there. You can see the existing single-family home and that existing accessory building there, that garage you're going to reutilize. And that's looking west interior to the subject property. The existing structure is proposed for one of the two smaller warehouse buildings. It's looking south from the site towards the adjacent single-family home and that the rear yard there. And then one more interior to the site, looking at the existing single-family home. They're going to propose to reuse that for offices. This is looking north along Beecham Road. You can see it's ribbon paved. You can see that the Red Tail Lane is under construction there. And then one last shot is looking south on Beecham Road towards the intersection with Meadowlark Drive again. This will ultimately be closed. This is the West Suburban Area Plan Update land use recommendation map. You can see the property highlighted in yellow, recommending single-family residential zoning. There are some commercial land use recommendations further south along Country Club. Again, that GBS zone site, it's really more of commercial recreation and not an actual commercial site. There is a special land use consideration area highlighted with the I asterisk. There are a number of recommendations regarding how that site will be accessed to provide proper access to that, and a limitation on the intensity of uses back there, just so you know. And this is a proposed site plan. Highlighted in green are the existing structures. The single-family home is up front. That's the proposed office building where the single-family home is. That's the small garage they would want to reuse as a warehouse. And then highlighted in blue is approximately 3,000 square foot warehouse addition that they're proposing there. And staff summary, we found that this request does propose a relatively small scale commercial use that would likely have minimal impacts on adjacent properties. However, the request is generally inconsistent with the recommendations of Legacy 2030 and the area plan, which recommends single-family development at this location. Staff's primary concern was that the request could potentially lead to further commercial zoning requests in the surrounding area, which goes against, again, what the area plan recommendation is about encroachment into suburban neighborhoods. Therefore, staff does recommend denial of this request. The site plan meets UDO requirements. Be more than happy to answer any questions that you might have.
I remember when we approved that bank, which I guess has not occurred. Of course, I don't blame anyone for not building on Meadowlark at this point, but the general overall feel for this area was to leave that residential, but it is an odd area, and we thought that land going up Meadowlark that bank would be the sort of the beginning of that on that side and going up. So what is the staff's feeling about this triangle of land in there, and what kind of restraints are on it that are brought by the driving range and some of the other things that are in that area? I know the traffic is horrendous, but besides that?
When you say this triangle of area, Mr. Bryan, just to clarify, do you mean the area recommended for
Well,
single
running
family
up
in the area?
to, what's the road up there? Running from Meadowlark, sort of over to Shallowford Road.
You're absolutely right. Again, this is a area that has challenges. Again, there's kind of a variety of different land uses there. As you mentioned, staff had similar views of the credit union being kind of the office transition from the commercial area that's on the east side of Meadowlark with the Sheetz and the Walmart and the 300,000 square feet of commercial approved as part of Brookberry.
Yeah.
And that given the kind of self-contained nature of Beecham, once it is cul-de-sac, that's why the area plan recommendation called that for being single-family residential, because it is kind of cut off. You have to go through Red Tail Lane, which is a semi-residential / office street to get there. But as you've said, there's certainly some other factors that put challenges on that, such as the presence of the HBS to the west, although that is currently only being used as a golf range. So the zoning is intense, but the actual use is probably not that intense because it orients north-south, so you're hitting, the tees are basically along Country Club, and the only use is basically if someone has a long drive and they get it 250 yards down there, then they're probably good to go.
And then the floodplain.
Correct, yeah.
Okay. That helps me a little bit understand that area.
But again, in full disclosure, with on the west side of Meadowlark, both on the west side of Beecham and, kind of that wedge between Meadowlark and the driving range, there are efforts, I think, underway to try to do an assemblage to perhaps bring something in comprehensively to look at a rezoning in conjunction with the little letter I SLUCA that's in the plan. So, again, there are efforts underway that, again, would perhaps further isolate this area as an island of residential surrounded by non-residential. But again, at this point, it's a little bit premature because we don't know what's going to happen there. So again, similar to the last case where there are kind of pros and cons on both sides of the argument, to be consistent with, to respect the plan and to be consistent in our approach, we felt like the area plan at this point should kind of carry the day, but certainly can see an argument to the contrary.
So there are 3 private residences in that area before the floodplain, is that right?
3 or 4, and the petitioners own a residence and this property, so they own at least 2 of the 4, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions for Mr. Wilson? All right, thank you. So we have a public hearing on this. Again, each side will have 12 minutes. We have proponents in this case, and we have Catherine Everhart. If you would state your name, address, and zip code for the record, please.
Catherine Everhart, 160 Beecham Road, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, 27106. My husband and Jesse, my husband and I, we own a company, Heritage Hardwood Floors. It's a small business. We've had it for 18 years. And our purpose for requesting the zoning is for us to put our offices there and use the existing structures for offices, and then at the back of the property to, erect an auxiliary building, essentially a metal enclosed carport for storage. No work would actually be done on site. We always go to our clients' homes, facilities, school systems for us to do our work, so nothing would actually be done there. And, as everyone's been discussing, I understand that the plan, the legacy plan and the West Suburban Area Plan does have this marked off to keep as residential. And there are some staff concerns that have been brought up, so I just wanted to kind of address a few of those and let you know how we plan to keep within the constructs of the West Suburban Area Plan. So like I said, with the existing structures, we plan to keep them with a residential appearance. We're simply going to update the exterior, update the curb appeal, make it a little more pedestrian, staying within those pedestrian-oriented designs, constructs that you have within your plan. The new auxiliary building for storage, like I said, it's going to be, as you can see on the plan, it's going to be in the very back of the property. So it's going to be sitting back there at the woods right there by the driving range. And we do plan on keeping the woods and everything around it. There's going to be buffers between 190 and 210 and 250, which are those, well, it's not on that one, but in one of the other maps, it shows you that they're directly behind. Also, with the scale of activity, it's going to be extremely limited because essentially it's just going to be used for offices and storage. So there won't be any noise pollution concerns, traffic concerns, that sort of thing for any of our neighbors. Jesse and I have lived at 160 for 9 years, and as you guys have mentioned, with the plan, you know, we've seen a lot of changes. We've also gotten to know the family that owns the majority of the land on Beecham Road, along with our other neighbors. And, you know, the Sheets has gone up, Walmart, Goodyear, Car Wash, all of those, and the Brookberry extension. And as you can see, the property is already we're pretty much surrounded by commercial zoning of varying types. So with that said, Brian did mention that the State Employees Credit Union, I assume is, well, I don't assume, we've actually spoken with them because they've been in our front yard, that their intention is to move forward with construction once the Meadow Lark widening is complete. And my understanding that's probably next summer. So, and that, we looked this afternoon, it's about 22 steps from our front porch at 160. So it's already going in that direction as commercial. So with all of that said, we're going to have very little impact on the street and the area, well, with the exception of people that tell someone how to get to their apartment and they turn up our street, turn around in our driveway and go back because they tell them first left, but Beecham is the first left. So it's a dead-end street. Like Brian said, it's going to be cut off once that Red Tail Lane is completed, which they're still working on. So really the other residents on Beecham Road, they wouldn't even have to come past 190 or 160. At that point, they would just be coming out on Red Tail, that little cut through, and right out Rosewind onto Meadow Lark. So really the most impact it would have on anyone would be us next door at 160. Also, as you can see with our submitted documentation, we have already spoken with all of our neighbors because, like I said, we've lived there for 9 years. We've gotten to know them, and none of them have any issues with us doing the rezoning request. And that was the first thing we did before we even started any of this process. So just the last couple of things. Jesse and I have lived and worked in this community all of our lives. We have no intentions in making this an invasive business. You know, we're only going to be open Monday through Friday, 9 to 4. It's going to be very little traffic. So it's going to minimally impact our neighbors, the street, and the surrounding area. And our zoning request, we just feel like is sort of keep it in line with where that area is currently going and where it's headed. So we just really just want to have a place to run our small business. Thank you.
6.5 minutes.
All right, 6.5 minutes left. First, are there any questions from Ms. Everhart?
Question.
Sure.
You all live in the property north or south? You live adjacent, right?
South.
South.
I live towards the end of Beecham where it will be cut off. Yeah, that's our property.
Where the trailer is and that
Yeah,
garage,
that's our trailer.
that's that's where they live. So it's to the south if you're looking at it on the map.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm terrible with directions.
No,
I
no,
would never
you're
be able
fine.
to tell you
You're
which
fine.
direction that
Yeah,
was.
and so the property is the property where I see the garage, and you'd add something back there.
Correct, behind that small garage.
Okay,
Yes.
all right,
Yep.
got it, thank you.
Any additional questions? All right, we have 6.5 minutes left. Would anyone else like to speak in support?
You're gonna have a really long commute.
Right? Going once, going twice?
No, we're good, thank you.
All right. Seeing no one else, I declare the public hearing closed.
Mr. Chairman, if you could, I know there's no one here, but we just ask if there's opposition.
Is there any opposition? I'm going to reopen this closing. Is there any opposition to this case?
Thank you.
Opposition. Seeing no one, I declare the public hearing closed. All right, what is the pleasure of the board in this case?
I move that the planning board find that the request is inconsistent with the comprehensive plan.
It's been moved, it's moved by Ms. Gray, second by Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? All those in favor, sign of aye. Aye. That is opposes? That is unanimous.
I move that the planning board recommend approval of W 3582.
Second.
We have a motion for approval by Ms. McRae and second by Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion?
I think it's significant that the other property owner isn't coming here to oppose, and I do appreciate them checking with them prior to.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, sign of aye. Aye. Oppose the same sign. It is unanimous. The motion passes.
Mr. Chairman of the board, the next item that we have on the agenda is item B4, which is UDO CC 24, which is a very large text amendment, but I think it probably can be handled very quickly, so I'll turn to Dan Rankin on that one.
Move approval.
It won't hurt our feelings, but.
Thank you, Chris. Good afternoon, members of the board. My name's Dan Rankin, and I'm here today to present to you UDO CC 24, which is a proposed text amendment to a unified development ordinance. And the purpose of this text amendment is to introduce new and improved graphics to the UDO to better illustrate the ordinance for our code users and readers. So a bit of background on this text amendment. The impetus for this text amendment dates back to 2018 when staff was working with a consultant by the name of Code Right Planners on the development of the UDO as it is today, the Clear Code UDO. And one of this consultant's main comments was that the UDO would greatly benefit from the introduction of new and improved graphics into that document. And at the time, the UDO did not have many graphics. So let's get the red dot out of the way. As a consequence of that consultancy, staff prepared back in the fall of 2020 an initial round of 24 graphics, which was previously approved. And as part of that work process, staff also developed a consistent visual style for how they felt graphics should appear in our UDO. And one last note on this slide, the preparation of graphics was a work program item of the planning board for this year. Few additional notes. It's really important to note the intent of this text amendment is not in any way, shape, or form to alter the UDO. We're merely seeking to illustrate it. A total of 93 graphics are proposed within this text amendment. These graphics, by and large, do use that pre-established visual style, which is a 3D semi-axonometric visual style, although we weren't shy with using more traditional drawing methods where we felt it was fitting. So we do have some plan section and elevation views as well. A few additional notes. We did seek to strike a balance between having the graphics be too literal and too abstract. We also sought to strike a balance between providing too much and too little text as well. And a majority of these graphics are brand new to the UDO. However, some are a replacement for existing older black and white drawings, and in some instances, black and white photos too. So we'll hop right into a few examples. This is an example from Chapter 4. This illustrates the general dimensional requirements within the RMU district. This is also a good example of that 3D visual style that was previously established. Here we have a fairly simple example from Chapter 5. This is a use-specific standard illustration, and the use being illustrated is small home child daycare uses. Here we have an example of a replacement graphic. This is an example from Chapter 6. The two plans on the right is the graphic as it is, and the graphic on the left is the replacement graphic. The replacement graphic, we were able to combine two plans into one, add some color, and this is an example where stuff up the plan view was a little bit more crisp and more clear. Here we have an example from Chapter 11. Just like the slide before it, the example on the right-hand side is the graphic as it is, and the left-hand side is the new graphic. And this is an illustration, the very last one in the text amendment. This illustrates one of the definitions in Chapter 11. This is the illustrates the definition of like what a yard is relative to a street and relative to a zoning parcel. And I also share this, staff, we generally conformed with the color scheme that was previously established, but we weren't too shy about adding a little additional color where we felt it would help an illustration pop and read more crisply and clearly. Staff, we do feel that the text amendment as presented does substantially complete the process of illustrating the UDO. However, nothing ever really ends, and as the UDO changes and evolves, and as especially as new concepts or new sections are added to the UDO, it may be either required or beneficial to add more graphics in the future. So in overarching summary, staff, we do recommend approval of this text amendment, UDO CC 24. And I thank you very much for your time. I apologize for the length of the text amendment, and I'd certainly be happy to try to answer any questions you might have. So thank you so much.
Any thoughts or questions? I know we looked at this at work session.
I'm sorry the public couldn't have been at our work session and heard some of the discussion around this, but I appreciate the clarification that none of this is meant to change what is in the text, because the public needs to know that for sure. And I guess if there's a tie, it goes to the text, not to the graphics. And then the second thing, I didn't hear you address as much, but you sort of did, that it isn't scaled dimensionally for it to be used as a guidance for developers or for somebody trying to work on side whatever in the yards, that they have to refer to the text for the actual distances and all that, even though it may be close in the graphics.
That's true, Mr. Bryan. Yeah, after our work session, I took a look at it, and the way, it's not really a true axonometric drawing. The plan isn't directly to scale. This is a good example of a graphic that compensates for that, though, because it does list the dimensions in text on the graphic. So yeah, I mean, the graphics, they're not to scale anyway, but are a useful scale. You would never want to plop a scale down on a printout of the UDO. So, but the text does kind of illuminate the dimensional requirements. This is a good example of that. So
thank you.
Sure.
And I think that's something where this clarifies a lot more than just the text, so that helps a lot. I had a friend this week who I kind of had to draw something like this for her because she's trying to do an addition in her house, and I explained to her setbacks, and it just went over her head. So to be able to draw it out and show her, like, look, we can't do this in your property because you're not within the 7 feet that you have to be away from your property line. This is something I could have given to her, and she'd been like, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
It is a lot help.
Thank you. Any additional questions or thoughts? What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, if you could just ask if there's anyone here to
Is there
speak in
anyone
opposition
here?
or.
The only one here would be the planning staff.
I know, well.
Is there anyone here in opposition to this recommendation? Seeing no one, I declare the public hearing closed. What is the pleasure of the board?
Move approval.
We have a motion by Mr. Yes.
This is a dual motion. We still have to do a consistency. Yeah, we do. And I think last time perhaps we did one, we didn't, or maybe we went back and picked it up. But I did confirm with the city attorney's office, we do in fact have to have a consistency statement.
Then I move that the planning board find that the request is consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Motion by Mr. Bryant, second by Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? All those in favor, sign of aye. Aye. Oppose the same sign. That is unanimous.
I further move that the planning board recommend the approval of UDO CC 24.
Motion by Mr. Bryant, second by Mr. Grubbs. Any discussion? All those in favor, sign of aye. Aye. Oppose the same sign. That is unanimous. Very good, Mr. Bryant. Thank you very kindly.
Job well done, staff.
Thank you, Dan. Mr. Chairman of the board, the items I have under staff report should be fairly brief. Of course, we always want to defer to the board, but I will turn to Kirk, who will talk to you briefly about what you want to do about your work session for June.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Chris, and good afternoon again, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As you all recall, you adopted our work program for fiscal year 23-24. Hard to believe I'm saying that at your last meeting. And we've kind of wrapped down on the items that were contained within the current fiscal year. As such, we don't have anything formally to discuss or go over with the board. So assuming you all are okay with it, we would ask if you're interested in canceling the June work session.
Without objection, that passes.
All right, thank you, sir.
You're very welcome.
I'll now turn to Brian, who will give you a brief July case preview.
All right, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, so we're kind of back at more, I would say, average or normal July planning board meeting. So we've got one, at least right now, continued case, PBR 2023-06, 5 new rezoning requests, 1 additional planning board review, and then 3 preliminary subdivisions. So we'll be right back at it in July.
All right. I had 2 other items for staff report. Just wanted to remind the planning board that at the end of the July meeting, we will have the election of officers, the nomination and election of officers for the planning board for the next year. And just one other note, neither one are here right now, but at your, more than likely at your July meeting, we'll introduce Liska Bradley, who's been on our staff for a number of years, but she was recently promoted from the permit office to a planner position. So she will be at your meeting. And then for those who know Matthew Burchick, he's been with the city for over 14 years, but all of that time spent in Winston-Salem DOT. Recently, he moved from Winston-Salem DOT to the Planning and Development Services Department, and he is going to be handling our environmental reviews for projects that have federal funding. So he'll be doing other things too, but that will be his primary job because it has been running Kelly Bennett and Tiffany on our staff ragged with all the projects that have been coming through. So anyway, we'll do formal introductions at your July meeting, but just wanted to let y'all know of those 2 hires. And with that, I don't have anything else.
Is there anything else for the good of the order?
We have our motion to adjourn.
Motion by Ms. Smith. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Lamb. We are adjourned.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, we only missed it by 7 minutes. I thought 6, so.
I told the wife probably.
Yeah, that was what our internal over-under was.
Yep.
Mark it every Thursday nobody's ever asked us to get in. I guess you can't bet on the sport you're playing there.
No.
You can now. That's true. You bet on anything now.
Speaking of
I'm the Pete Rose of the planning board.
Now it's legal.
That's right.
Yeah, baseball. We were in Charleston this past weekend. We're going to Richmond this weekend. So, yeah, and then of course football starts back on Monday as far as summer workouts. So thank you.
I wonder if I could get someone from